The call from the stars. It was a quiet evening on Earth, the kind of night where people felt safe, surrounded by the hum of everyday life. The stars twinkled in the sky, distant and calm, as they had for thousands of years. But no one knew that, far beyond Earth, the universe was in chaos. Civilizations on distant planets were being destroyed by an unknown force, one so powerful that even the mightiest alien empires were helpless against it. Their ships and cities fell like leaves in the wind. Then something unexpected happened. A message was sent to Earth. It came from the stars, a cry for help from across the galaxy. For the first time in history, an alien race reached out to humanity. But what did they want? Why did they think humans could help? The message was simple. The words were clear but full of fear. The galaxy is dying. We need heroes. Will you help us? It was an urgent plea, but to whom could it be sent? The message had been broadcasted across space, targeting every civilization capable of receiving it. Planets that had known only peace for centuries were in ruin. Planets with incredible powers, vast armies, and advanced technology had fallen before this mysterious enemy. But now, the message turned to Earth, the home of the humans. On Earth, the leaders of the world received the signal. At first, they thought it was a joke or a hoax, something created by a computer glitch or perhaps a trick. But when they studied it closely, they realized it was real. The message was from an alien species known as the HFY, an ancient race that had long been allies with others in the galaxy. They had survived countless wars and battles, but now they were on the brink of extinction. What was even more alarming was that the HFY were not alone in their plea. Messages had also come from other alien civilizations that Earth had never heard of before. The galaxy's strongest forces were all sending distress signals, all calling for help. The leaders gathered. What could humanity do? Earth had no powerful military, no space fleets capable of battling alien forces. Humans had barely begun to explore their own solar system, let alone the vast reaches of space. Yet the question hung in the air like an unspoken truth. If not humanity, then who? For a moment, silence filled the room. Then one voice spoke. It was the President of the United States, someone who had always believed in the potential of humans. We cannot ignore this. The fate of the galaxy is at stake, and we must answer the call. We must do what we do best. Stand up when no one else will. Her words echoed through the chambers of the United Nations, the European Union, and other global bodies. Across the world, governments started to mobilize. The people of Earth, ordinary men and women, prepared for what seemed impossible. What did they have to offer? What made humanity different from the countless other civilizations that had fallen? The answer lay in their very nature. Humans were survivors. They were adaptable, quick-thinking, and determined. They had the spirit to fight back against all odds. As plans began to form, a new alliance was born. Nations of Earth set aside their differences to prepare for a war that none of them had ever expected. They turned to their scientists, engineers, and military leaders to begin the process of organizing Earth's first-ever galactic defense. But the question remained, how could humanity fight something so powerful, something that had defeated entire civilizations? Was humanity truly ready for such a challenge? As Earth's leaders debated, something else happened. The enemy, which the galaxy had only referred to as the invaders, made their move. They attacked the HFY homeworld, a planet that had been a beacon of hope for many civilizations. In a single devastating strike, the invaders wiped out everything. The cities, the people, the technology. The planet was reduced to rubble, its once beautiful oceans turned to dust. The galaxy watched in horror. If the HFY, one of the oldest and most powerful races, could be destroyed so easily, what chance did the other species have? The message was no longer just a plea for help. It was a warning. The decision was made. Earth would send its people to the stars. They would fight not just for survival, but for the future of every living being in the galaxy. As Earth's first military expedition into deep space was prepared, the weight of their mission was clear. They were not just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for the future of the entire galaxy. The soldiers, scientists, and leaders chosen for this mission knew that failure would mean the end of everything they had ever known. And so, with a mixture of fear and determination, humanity prepared to take their first step onto the galactic stage. The call had come from the stars, and humanity was ready to answer it. But no one knew what awaited them in the vast unknown of space. Would they succeed, or would they become just another footnote in the galaxy's long, tragic history? Only time would tell. Humanity's reluctant decision. The world was in turmoil. News of the alien call spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the Earth. People gathered in crowded streets, glued to their screens, watching as the world's leaders debated what to do. Would humanity really take on such a massive responsibility? Could Earth, with its untested military and relatively primitive space technology, truly face the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever known? Nations split. Some believed the threat was too great. We must protect our people, argued the leaders of the more conservative nations. They warned that stepping into the galactic conflict could destroy everything humanity had worked for. Others, however, felt a deep moral responsibility to answer the call. How can we live with ourselves if we don't try? Cried the defenders of the galaxy, their voices full of conviction. The debate dragged on for days. Tensions between nations grew as they argued over how to respond. Fear and uncertainty swept across the globe. Yet, one thing was clear: the human spirit was being tested in a way it never had before. Among the leaders, one stood apart from the rest. General James Hawk, a war hero from Earth's last great conflict, was not a man to shrink from a fight. He stood at the front of the council meeting, his voice calm yet filled with authority. "This is our chance," he said. "We are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for the future of every living being in this galaxy. The stars have called, and humanity has always risen to challenges. We cannot back down now." His words struck a chord with the people. Slowly but surely, more and more nations joined the call to arms, agreeing to send their forces into the unknown depths of space. But not everyone was convinced. Some still had doubts, and it was clear that many were afraid. That night, while the world leaders deliberated, a chilling event occurred. In the distance, across the great oceans and mountains, the capital of the United States was under attack. A single, small fleet of ships, massive and dark, appeared above the city. They moved slowly, deliberately, like a predator watching its prey. The ships were sleek, without any identifying marks, strange, alien, and terrifying. They opened fire on the city's defenses without warning. Earth's military responded in a panic. Their weapons were no match for the advanced alien ships. In just minutes, the city was in ruins. Panic spread across the globe. The once thriving streets were filled with chaos as people scrambled for shelter, unsure of where to turn. The message from the aliens was clear. They weren't just threats to distant planets. They were now here on Earth. The invaders had begun their assault on humanity's home. The Earth's leaders convened once more. This attack was no longer an abstract warning from the stars. It was a direct assault. Earth's survival was now at stake. But a larger question loomed. Why were these invaders attacking? What did they want from Earth? As General Hawk stood at the podium once more, his eyes hardened with resolve. "We've seen their power. We've seen their cruelty. But what we also know is that we are humans, and we do not give up. Not now. Not ever." The decision was made. Humanity would stand and fight. There was no turning back. The world united, and the great preparations began. Nations began pooling their resources, their technology, their military forces. They shared knowledge, developed new strategies, and strengthened alliances. Even civilians were drawn into the effort, volunteering their skills and talents to help defend Earth. But the invasion wasn't the only challenge humanity faced. As Earth prepared to send its troops into space, strange new alliances formed with the alien races that had once sought help. The first human ambassadors met with representatives from the Ishari, the Ilorans, and other alien species that had also been victims of the invaders. While the species were hesitant to trust humans at first, there was a growing realization: humanity's resilience and determination might be their best hope for survival. However, cracks began to appear in the alliance. Some alien species viewed humans as reckless, unprepared, and far too young to shoulder the weight of the galaxy's future. They feared that humanity might jeopardize everything in their desperate attempt to prove themselves. Meanwhile, across Earth, fear and anger simmered. The people had already witnessed the invaders' power firsthand. Many wondered if humanity's efforts would be enough. Was the human spirit truly strong enough to face such a terrifying force? Or was this just a fool's hope? One night, as Earth's preparations grew more intense, a message arrived, not from the invaders, but from a mysterious source, a warning. A recording from an unknown alien was intercepted, speaking in a language no human had ever heard. But through the advanced translators, the message was deciphered. "Do not fight the invaders," the voice warned. "Their strength is beyond anything you can imagine. Your world will burn. No one can defeat them. Turn back while you still can." The recording ended abruptly, leaving everyone stunned in silence. What was this new warning? Was it a trap set by the invaders to scare humanity into surrendering? Or was it a true warning from someone who had already seen their power firsthand? As fear and uncertainty crept into the hearts of humanity, one thing became clear: the battle was just beginning. The first step into the unknown had been taken, but the path ahead would be far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Would humanity's determination and bravery be enough to overcome the galaxy's greatest threat? Or would this war prove to be their undoing? The next step was terrifying, but one thing was certain: humans would face it head-on, together. And thus, the fight for the galaxy began. Training for the unknown. The days after Earth's decision to enter the galactic war were filled with a whirlwind of preparation. As nations rallied together, the human race began to pull every resource they had into a single goal: survival. Soldiers, engineers, and scientists worked side by side, rushing to develop new weapons, ships, and strategies to face the invaders. Yet, no matter how advanced Earth's technology became, nothing could truly prepare them for what lay ahead. How could humanity fight a war against an enemy so vast and powerful, one that had destroyed civilizations with ease? How could they stand up to beings whose technology was centuries, if not millennia, beyond their own? General James Hawke stood at the front of the makeshift military academy, where Earth's brightest and bravest were being trained. He could see the uncertainty in their eyes, the fear in their hearts. These soldiers were not warriors by trade. They were everyday people, farmers, teachers, doctors, who had volunteered to fight for the future of their world. "They don't believe in you," Hawke said, looking over the sea of new recruits. "And they may be right. They may say we're too young, too weak. But that's exactly what we want them to think, because they haven't seen us fight yet. And when they do, they'll know the name of humanity." The recruits, still unsure, stood silently. Some felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on their shoulders. They were about to fight not just for themselves, but for the survival of every living creature across the galaxy. It was the kind of burden that could crush even the strongest of souls, but Hawke knew that if they held on to their humanity, they would stand a chance. At the same time, Earth's scientists were working around the clock to understand the enemy. The invaders' ships were like nothing humanity had ever seen: sleek, unyielding, and devastating. No conventional weapon could pierce their hulls. The invaders' energy weapons were powerful enough to vaporize entire cities with a single shot. Humanity's best minds began to analyze every fragment of alien technology they could salvage. They dissected alien weapons, reverse engineering them to learn how they worked. They had no allies, no advanced technology to rely on, But they had one thing no one else had: human ingenuity. One night, as the war planners sat together in a dark room filled with holographic maps and blueprints, a breakthrough came. Dr. Ava Stone, a lead scientist on the project, looked up with wide eyes. "Wait, this doesn't make sense." She tapped the screen, zooming in on a captured fragment of an invader weapon. This is energy manipulation. It's not just destruction. It's controlled energy, creating space-time fluctuations that can break down matter. Her words were met with stunned silence. "We can adapt this," she continued, "but it's going to take time. It's not just about fighting. It's about understanding their technology on a molecular level." As the training intensified, Earth's soldiers learned not only how to fight, but how to adapt. They were taught alien languages, tactics, and combat techniques. They trained in zero-gravity environments, learning how to fight in space, in the midst of shattered worlds and wreckage. But there was one constant thread that ran through every lesson: the belief that humanity could endure. It was in their blood, their culture, and their history. They had always overcome the impossible. But not everyone agreed. Among the ranks, a growing number of dissenters began to question the wisdom of the mission. They had seen the invaders' power firsthand, and doubts began to creep into their minds. Some felt that they were being sent to die, mere pawns in a game they didn't fully understand. What if they were being used as bait? What if the real enemy wasn't some faceless force, but the very governments and alien races they were supposed to trust? A small group of disillusioned soldiers formed quietly in the shadows, arguing among themselves. "Why are we doing this?" one of them asked. "We're not ready for a war like this. We're being sent to slaughter." Their leader, a former intelligence officer named Lieutenant Riley, shook her head. "I don't know. I just know that if we don't stand up, no one else will. I don't want to live in a world where we're too afraid to fight back." As doubts began to spread, General Hawk made a secret visit to the soldiers in training. He stood before them, his eyes hard and steady. "I've heard the rumors," he said. "I've heard your doubts, and I understand them. But listen to me. The galaxy doesn't just need soldiers. It needs humans. It needs people who will fight for something greater than themselves. You are the spark that could light the fire of hope for all those worlds out there." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I've seen what happens when humans fight. We don't just fight for victory. We fight for each other. And that is the greatest weapon we have. We can't stop now. If we fail, everything we fought for will be lost." For some, his words struck deep. For others, they were just a last-ditch attempt to instill some kind of courage. But they all knew one thing. They were already too deep into this to turn back. They had made their choice, and now there was no looking back. But time was running out. Earth had only a short window before the invaders would reach the planet again. The soldiers trained harder, pushed to their limits, but no matter how much they learned, the fear of the unknown loomed over them. As Earth's preparations reached their peak, something happened that no one expected. A strange signal was intercepted, coming not from the invaders, but from another unknown race, a race of beings who had once fought the invaders and survived. It was a message of hope, but could they trust it? As the soldiers prepared to leave Earth, knowing they had no choice but to face the unknown, they realized that their greatest challenge wasn't the invaders. It was learning to trust in one another, to fight as a single, united force. The time to make their move had come. But would humanity's unity and courage be enough to face the invaders and the dark secrets hidden in the shadows of the galaxy? The next chapter of their journey was about to begin. The first battle. The fleet assembled at Earth's launch station was a sight to behold. Ships of all shapes and sizes, hastily constructed from both human and alien technology, formed a vast armada in orbit above Earth. There was no turning back now. The soldiers, who had trained tirelessly for weeks, were ready, or at least they thought they were. There was no true preparation for what awaited them in the vast reaches of space. General Hawk stood on the command bridge of the flagship, the Resolute, watching as Earth's greatest warriors prepared for their first mission. A coordinated strike against the invaders' forward base on the edge of the solar system. The intelligence had been gathered. The strategies discussed. It was simple. Strike hard, strike fast, and try to cripple the invaders' ability to send reinforcements. But despite all the planning, no one could have predicted how different space combat would be. The first taste of true war outside Earth's atmosphere was about to test humanity's resolve like nothing else. As the fleet made its jump into hyperspace, the sense of unease among the soldiers grew. It wasn't just the terrifying vastness of the galaxy that made them nervous. It was the unknown. Would the invaders be waiting? What if they were already one step ahead? After what felt like an eternity in hyperspace, the fleet arrived at their destination. A massive asteroid field, previously thought to be a hiding place for the invaders. The first few moments were filled with tense silence. The ships drifted through the void, scanning for any signs of enemy activity. Then, without warning, the darkness around them shattered like glass. A wave of enemy ships appeared from behind the asteroids, their sleek black bodies emerging from the shadows like predators. The invaders had been waiting, and they were far more prepared than anyone had anticipated. The first wave of attacks came in a blistering barrage of laser fire. The Resolute rocked as blasts collided with its shields, but the ship held strong, and the human forces retaliated with everything they had. Fighters darted out, weaving through the incoming fire, while massive capital ships fired their cannons into the heart of the enemy fleet. But the invaders' ships were unlike anything Earth had seen. They were fast, maneuverable, and their weapons, despite being partially understood, still outclassed humanity's technology. Each time a human ship managed to land a hit, the invaders' hulls seemed to absorb the energy, rendering their weapons useless. "What's happening?" A communications officer shouted. "We're doing nothing to them. They're not even flinching." General Hawk gritted his teeth as his hands gripped the controls tighter. "Keep firing. Hit them again. Don't stop." But despite their best efforts, the human fleet was being slowly overwhelmed. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, debris scattering through space. The sounds of the battle, though silent in the vacuum, echoed in the hearts of the soldiers, their fear palpable. They had underestimated their enemies. They had hoped for a quick victory, but the reality of war was harsh and brutal. As the battle raged on, Lieutenant Riley, who had once been doubtful about the mission, found herself at the controls of a fighter ship. The small vessel, an experimental model designed for speed and agility, darted in and out of the chaos, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. She had been trained for this moment, but nothing could prepare her for the fear that gripped her heart as the invader ships seemed to close in on her. Her weapons were ineffective, her shield barely holding up under the onslaught. The enemy was closing in. Just as she thought it was over, something unexpected happened. The unthinkable occurred. One of the human ships, a battle cruiser, Vanguard, fired a single powerful shot directly at an invader ship that had been toying with their forces. The blast hit its mark, and for the first time in the battle, the invader ship shuddered. It wasn't much, but it was a sign, a crack in the enemy's armor. Riley's pulse quickened as she realized the possibility. The invaders were not invincible. A surge of energy ran through her, and she quickly radioed back to the command center. "General, I've spotted a weak spot in their shields, just behind their main cannon. If we can hit them there, we can take them down." The general's voice crackled over the intercom, filled with urgency. "All ships, listen up. The weak point is just behind their weapon systems. Aim for that area and fire at will. We're not leaving this system without a fight." With newfound hope, the fleet adjusted their tactics. The battle shifted from a desperate defense to an aggressive offense. Each ship now targeted the invader vessel's weak points, unleashing everything they had. Human ingenuity, determination, and quick thinking were beginning to turn the tide. One by one, the invader ships fell. Though the battle was still raging, humanity had scored its first victory. It wasn't much. Far from it. But it was enough to show that the invaders could be beaten. But the price of this victory was steep. As the smoke cleared and the final invader ships retreated, the human fleet was left battered and bruised. Hundreds of lives had been lost. Earth's fleet had sustained heavy casualties, but they had proven one critical thing. Humanity could stand up against the darkness. On the bridge of the Resolute, General Hawk wiped the sweat from his brow. "We're still alive," he said softly. "And that's all that matters." But as they watched the invaders retreat into the depths of space, everyone knew this was only the beginning. The true test had only just begun, and humanity would have to be ready for the next fight. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth's military leaders gathered in the war room, reviewing the damage and assessing their next steps. It was clear that while the invaders had been pushed back, they were far from defeated. Humanity had taken the first step, but the galaxy was still at war, and as Earth's soldiers prepared for what lay ahead, one question lingered in the air. Had they truly won, or had they simply survived the first of many battles to come? The heart of the enemy. After the first successful strike against the invaders, humanity's spirits soared. The unexpected victory against such a powerful enemy gave Earth's forces a much-needed morale boost. But the battle had come at a great cost, and the true scale of the war was only beginning to dawn on them. The invaders were not retreating out of fear. They were regrouping, and they had a vast, relentless war machine at their disposal. The worst was yet to come. Despite the hard-fought victory, Earth's leaders knew that this was not enough. To truly defeat the invaders, they would need to strike at the heart of their operations, their source of power. But where was that heart? Where was the core of this mysterious enemy that had reduced civilizations to dust? Through intercepted transmissions, Earth's intelligence division had pieced together a disturbing truth. The invaders didn't just have powerful weapons. They had something far worse, something far more terrifying. Their ships, their weapons, and their technology were powered by a dark energy, something capable of destabilizing entire solar systems. Dr. Ava Stone, Earth's lead scientist, spent sleepless nights poring over data, trying to figure out how to counteract this dark energy. It was like nothing humanity had ever encountered, a force that could manipulate the very fabric of space and time. It was destructive, unpredictable, and incredibly volatile, and it was the heart of the invaders' power. The decision was made. A small, elite task force would infiltrate the invaders' homeworld, where they suspected the dark energy source was located. Earth's greatest minds had developed a plan to sabotage it, but they had no idea what kind of resistance they would face. The invaders would certainly be waiting for them, and the soldiers chosen for the mission would face odds stacked impossibly high. Lieutenant Riley, now a seasoned veteran after the first battle, was among the soldiers selected for the mission. Her once doubtful heart had hardened into something far stronger. She wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. She was fighting for the survival of every life across the galaxy. As their ships entered enemy territory, the team's nerves were tight with anticipation. The plan was simple: infiltrate the invaders' stronghold, locate the dark energy reactor, and sabotage it. But nothing ever goes according to plan in war. The moment they dropped out of hyperspace, the truth hit them like a wall. They were not alone. The invader forces had anticipated their every move. The mission quickly turned into a desperate fight for survival. The enemy ships, unlike anything the human fleet had faced before, surrounded them. Their massive black hulks towered over the small human ships, and their weapons unleashed waves of energy that shattered the darkness of space. The invaders had set traps at every turn, and the elite task force was caught in the middle of an ambush. "We've got to fight our way through," shouted Riley, her pulse racing as the enemy fired relentlessly at them. The human ships retaliated, but their weapons couldn't do enough. One by one, their allies' ships were destroyed, torn apart by the unstoppable onslaught of the invader fleet. As they pushed forward, deeper into the heart of the invaders' territory, the true nature of the enemy became clear. These were not just conquerors. They were driven by something far darker, something that had twisted their very souls. The task force finally reached the core of the invader base, a massive multi-layered structure built into the surface of a planet. It was here, buried deep beneath layers of stone and metal, that the dark energy reactor lay. The air was thick with tension, the soldiers' breath coming in quick, heavy gasps. They had only one goal now: destroy the reactor, and with it, the power that fueled the invaders. But as they descended into the depths of the stronghold, something strange happened. They began to see signs that they weren't alone, not in the traditional sense. The air was thick with a palpable presence, an oppressive force that seemed to close in around them. The walls of the structure were covered in strange symbols, alien runes that seemed to pulse with a dark, unnatural energy. "What is this?" whispered Riley, her voice barely audible. One of her team members, a scientist named Dr. Julian Gray, scanned the symbols with a special device. These aren't just markings. They're alive. The invaders have used this dark energy to change their very biology. They've become a part of it. Riley's heart raced. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a transformation. The invaders weren't just conquerors. They were addicts, addicted to the power that the dark energy gave them. They had surrendered their own identities to this force, becoming one with it. It was no wonder they were unstoppable. They didn't just have the power, they were the power. With every step they took, the weight of the mission pressed down on them. This wasn't just about sabotage anymore. It was about saving the very soul of the galaxy from the invaders' twisted grasp. Finally, they reached the heart of the reactor. It was a vast chamber, filled with a pulsating, glowing core that emanated an eerie energy. The dark energy thrummed with power, filling the room with a strange hum that made their skin crawl. "This is it," Dr. Gray said, his voice trembling. "If we destroy this, we can stop them, but we have to act fast. The invaders will be here soon." Riley and her team set the charges, their hands shaking from both fear and the sheer magnitude of the task at hand. But just as they were about to finish the setup, the alarms sounded. The invaders had found them. The room lit up with a bright flash of red as the doors to the reactor chamber burst open. The invader forces flooded in, their weapons raised, their eyes burning with the same dark energy that powered their empire. The task force was trapped. As the invaders closed in, Lieutenant Riley knew there was no escape. They had come too far to turn back now. There was only one choice: make sure the reactor was destroyed, no matter the cost. With a deep breath, Riley activated the final countdown. The room trembled as the charges began to detonate. But as the explosion shook the very core of the reactor, something unexpected happened. The dark energy exploded outward, taking everything with it. The invaders, the reactor, and the very planet itself were consumed in a massive wave of energy. It was both a victory and a tragedy. Humanity had dealt the invaders a crippling blow, but at a great price. The task force was lost, and with them, the mystery of the invaders' power had been silenced. But as the dust settled, a new question lingered in the silence. Was this truly the end of the invaders, or had they merely been driven into hiding, waiting for their next chance to rise again? Humanity would have to prepare for that answer. Humanity's unlikely alliance. The explosion that had crippled the invader stronghold sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Humanity had struck a devastating blow against the mysterious invaders, but the cost had been unimaginable. The task force sent to destroy the dark energy reactor had been lost, and though the invaders' main power source had been obliterated, it was unclear whether the enemy had truly been defeated or merely wounded. Earth's forces were left with more questions than answers, and there was a growing sense that this was not the end of the war, but only a chapter in a much darker story. The human fleet, battered and bruised but far from broken, regrouped. General Hawk stood before his team, his face grim but determined. "We've dealt them a heavy blow, but don't think for a second that the invaders are finished. If anything, we've shown them what we're capable of, and they'll be back. Stronger. A long silence filled the room. Everyone knew what had to be done. Earth couldn't face the invaders alone again, not with their limited resources and the uncertainty surrounding the enemy's true nature. That's when the unexpected happened. An encrypted message arrived, a beacon sent from an alien civilization that humanity had never encountered before. The message was sent in a language unfamiliar to Earth's scientists, but its urgency was undeniable. And just as before, it was a call for help. At first, humanity's leaders were hesitant. After all, they had just been burned by the last alliance they'd made with alien species. Their uneasy partnership with the Ishari and others had been fragile, and the destruction of the invaders' stronghold had only deepened the divide between the galaxy's races. There was little trust left, and many on Earth doubted that any other species would stand beside them in a fight against the invaders, especially after what had happened. But then, General Hawk received an unexpected visitor. It was an envoy from the Elorans, a race of beings that had remained neutral during the early stages of the war. The Elorans were known for their intellect, their advancements in technology, and their peaceful nature. They had never been enemies, but they had never been allies either. The representative, a tall figure with blue skin and luminescent eyes, stepped into the room. General Hawk. The Eloran spoke in a soft yet firm tone. We have been watching your progress. Your resilience, your ability to fight against impossible odds, is something we have never seen before in the galaxy. Hawk crossed his arms, skeptical. And what do you want from us? We've been waiting for a race capable of standing against the invaders. Your victory, however costly, has proven that humanity has what it takes. You've inspired us. We can no longer sit back and watch. The Elorans will join you in this fight. The words hung in the air. Humanity had never expected an alliance with the Elorans, a species whose technology far outpaced Earth's. Their ships were sleek, their weapons powerful, but what could they truly offer? Was this just a gesture of goodwill, or was there something deeper at play? Before Hawk could respond, another message arrived, this time from the Varkan, a warrior race known for their unyielding honor. They had been decimated by the invaders, but despite their losses, they too were extending a hand to Earth. We've seen what you did, Earth. You fought where no other could, and you survived. We will not stand by as the invaders ravage your worlds any longer. The Varkan will fight with you. The realization hit Hawk like a wave. It wasn't just a coincidence. Humanity had somehow become a beacon of hope, a symbol of defiance. The galaxy's fractured races, who had once bickered and fought amongst themselves, were beginning to unite around the one thing that humanity had proven: the power to survive, to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. But the question remained, what was this all for? The invaders had been crippled, but they were not gone. Their technology, their reach, their very nature, all of it still loomed large, and the galaxy's fragile alliances could fall apart at any moment. Could humanity truly lead a united front, or would these new allies turn their backs once more? Hawk stood before the Unified Council, representatives from Earth, the Elorans, the Varkan, and a dozen other species, all gathered to discuss their next steps. The room was tense, each race bringing its own fears, desires, and goals to the table. But there was one thing they all agreed on. If they were to defeat the invaders, they had to do it together. This is our chance, General Hawk said, his voice steady but powerful. We can't do this alone. And we don't have time to waste. The invaders will regroup. We've seen their power, and we know they'll come back stronger. But we've also seen what happens when we stand together. The representatives of the alien races nodded, and the room fell into a rare moment of unity. It was clear now. The war was no longer just about Earth. It was about all of them, about the survival of the galaxy itself. And so, the alliance was formed. Each race contributed what they could: technology, soldiers, ships, and intelligence. The Elorans shared their advanced energy manipulation techniques, which helped Earth's engineers design more powerful weapons. The Varkan brought their warrior traditions to the battlefield, training humanity's soldiers in the art of war. The Ishari, though reluctant to trust their former enemies, offered crucial intelligence on the invaders' tactics and weaknesses. But despite all the collaboration, doubt still lingered in the minds of many. Was this alliance truly solid, or was it just a temporary measure to defeat a common enemy? Could humans truly lead a fractured galaxy toward peace and victory? The war had entered a new phase, and as humanity and its new allies prepared for the next assault on the invaders, one thing was clear: the outcome of this war would define the future of the galaxy. Whether or not the alliance would hold, whether or not humanity could lead them to victory, remained uncertain. But one thing was certain: Earth had done the unthinkable. It had brought a galaxy together. Now, they had to prove they could keep it together. The final stand. The galaxy was on the brink of collapse. For years, the invaders had terrorized civilizations, reduced planets to rubble, and shattered hopes. But now something incredible had happened. Against all odds, humanity had led the charge to unite the galaxy's fractured species, and together they had dealt the invaders a crushing blow. Yet the true test was still ahead. Could the united forces of the galaxy truly stand against the full might of the invaders, or would their fragile alliance fall apart in the heat of battle? The final confrontation was imminent. Every fleet, human, Ellerin, Varkan, and countless others, had gathered in orbit around a dead star, the site of the invaders' last known stronghold. The task was simple: crush the invaders once and for all, before they could regroup and renew their war. But the complexity of the situation was staggering. This wasn't just a battle of strength. It was a test of unity, of trust, and of humanity's ability to lead the galaxy toward survival. General Hawk stood on the bridge of the Resolute, staring out at the Armada before him. There were ships from races that had once been enemies, now united under a single banner. The fleet stretched out into the void, a massive show of power and hope. Yet even as the fleet moved into position, Hawk knew that they had no guarantee of victory. The invaders had shown time and time again that they could adapt, evolve, and strike where they were least expected. And now, the galaxy was facing them on their home turf. "Prepare for battle," Hawk said, his voice low but resolute. "We are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for everything that still has a chance to survive." As the fleet surged forward, a strange calm settled over Hawk. For all the uncertainty, all the questions about their future, one truth remained clear: humanity had come farther than anyone had imagined. The galaxy had never seen a race like them before, one that fought with such ferocity, such heart. They had come together, against all odds, to stand against a force that sought to destroy everything they held dear. Then, without warning, the invaders revealed themselves. Their fleet, cloaked in darkness, appeared from the shadows of the dead star. Thousands of ships, each one more formidable than the last, emerged from the depths of space. The galaxy's alliance was outnumbered, outgunned, and still in the process of uniting their strategies. But they had something the invaders didn't: belief. The belief that even in the face of impossible odds, they could still make a difference. A communication burst through the fleet's comms, an encrypted message from an alien source. It was the invaders themselves, but there was something strange in their tone. For the first time in the war, they spoke not in threats, but in something resembling fear. "You cannot win," the voice said. "You are too weak, too small. You cannot defeat us. We are beyond the reach of your petty alliances. This galaxy will burn, and you will be the ones who light the fire." The message cut off abruptly, but its implications were clear. The invaders believed they had already won. They didn't fear Earth's forces anymore. They saw them as an insignificant blip on the radar of the universe. They had underestimated humanity before, and now they were about to make the same mistake again. The battle began. The skies above the dead star erupted in chaos as the two fleets collided. Laser fire streaked through space, ships exploding in brilliant flashes of light. The human fleet, with its newly improved weapons, fought with a desperation born of knowing what was at stake. But the invaders were relentless. Their ships moved as one, coordinated in ways that Earth's forces struggled to match. Every shot they fired was calculated, precise, and devastating. As the battle raged on, General Hawk realized something. This wasn't just a war of firepower. It was a war of willpower. The invaders were powerful, yes, but their greatest strength lay in their overwhelming presence. They had dominated the galaxy through fear, their forces like an unstoppable tide. But now, the tide was shifting. For the first time, humanity and their allies were fighting not out of desperation, but out of a shared belief that the future was worth saving. The turning point came unexpectedly. A Varkan cruiser, leading a bold charge toward the invaders' flagship, made it through the enemy lines. With a roar of engines, the ship launched a final devastating barrage at the heart of the invader command ship. The explosion was so massive that it sent shockwaves through space, causing the invader fleet to falter, if only for a moment. That moment was all humanity needed. The ships of Earth's fleet, led by the Resolute, surged forward. With renewed determination, they pushed past the invaders' defenses and struck at the core of their power, an energy reactor deep within the invader flagship. The reactor was the lifeblood of the invaders' technology, their weaponry, and their very existence. With a decisive blow, humanity's forces disabled the reactor, sending a surge of energy that reverberated through the invader fleet. Ships began to falter, their systems failing one by one. The invaders' hold on the galaxy began to crumble. But the victory came at a heavy price. As the invader fleet began to break apart, General Hawk watched in horror as the flagship, the heart of the enemy force, launched one final catastrophic attack. A massive shockwave erupted, tearing through the battlefield. The fleet's shields flared and began to crack under the pressure. The human fleet was almost shattered. In those final moments, Hawk made a decision. All ships, retreat. Now, we've done enough. Earth will be safe. The galaxy will be safe. The retreat was painful. The fleet was bruised, battered, and limping. But as Earth's ships began to pull back, the invader fleet, now disorganized and broken, retreated into the farthest reaches of space. The war was over for now. The galaxy had been saved. The aftermath was a quiet one. In the days that followed, humanity stood at the center of a galaxy that had been united in a way that had never seemed possible. The cost had been enormous, but the future was open, full of possibilities. And as the dust settled, one truth was clear. Humanity had answered the galaxy's call. They had stood up when no one else would, and they had won. The battle had ended, but the war for the soul of the galaxy had just begun.